Here's a jawbone from Iron Age Israel, 1200 years before Christ. Look at those teeth. They're worn down almost flat, like someone took a file to them. Smooth, polished. Some are ground right down to the pulp cavity. Now here's the shock. This mouth has almost zero cavities. No decay, no abscesses. But the teeth are destroyed. We blame sugar for everything. And sure, sugar rots teeth. But ancient Israelites didn't have sugar. They had something worse. Flour. Stone-ground flour. With microscopic rock particles baked into every loaf of bread. You learnt in Sunday school that ancient people had strong teeth because they didn't eat processed food. That's wrong. They had strong teeth. But their diet destroyed them in a completely different way. What I'm about to show you comes from bioarchaeology, the study of human remains from biblical times, and the evidence is sitting in museum drawers right now. Hundreds of skulls, thousands of teeth, all telling the same story. What did ancient Israelites actually do about their teeth? The answer is brutal. And honest? It changed how I read the Bible. Let me give you a concrete number. In 2016, a team led by bioarchaeologist Dr. Rachel Sarig from Tel Aviv University published a study of 78 skulls from the biblical period. What they found was consistent across every single jaw. The average wear rate on first molars, the big grinding teeth in the back. Those teeth should last a lifetime. In ancient Israel, they were functionally useless by age 30. Here's why. Every morning, an Israelite woman would take 2 stones, a saddle quern. She'd pour grain between them and grind, back and forth, for hours. The stones were local basalt or limestone, harder than the grain, and they shed tiny particles into the flour, not visible to the naked eye. But under a microscope, that flour looks like sandpaper. Every meal, every day, from childhood to old age. Those rock fragments acted like fine grit sandpaper on the enamel. Now I want you to picture something. You bite into bread. The first contact feels normal, but as you chew, those microscopic stones grind against your teeth, millimeter by millimeter, year after year. By age 20, the cusps of the molars are gone. By 30, the dentin is exposed. By 40, some teeth are worn down to the gum line. And here's the irony. This wear actually prevented cavities.
On the stone, almost identical to the wear
Dr. Sarig's team found that the constant grinding smoothed out the grooves and fissures where bacteria normally hide. The teeth were polished clean, but at a terrible cost. The average Israelite lost their first permanent molar between ages 35 and 45. That's not old age, that's middle age. And by 50, many had lost most of their back teeth entirely. So if their teeth were grinding down this fast, how did they eat? How did they survive into their 60s and 70s? The answer is in something the Bible never mentions. But the bones show it. You've probably heard the phrase, clean as a whistle. Ancient Israelites had a different standard. They didn't have toothbrushes. They didn't have toothpaste. But they had something the modern world is rediscovering right now. The miswak. A twig from the Salvadora persica tree. The teeth cleaning stick. Archaeological evidence from multiple sites in Israel. And Jordan shows these sticks were used continuously from the Bronze Age through the Roman period. Dr. Nava Panitz Cohen of the Hebrew University has identified them in domestic contexts dating to the 10th century before Christ. The user chews one end until it frays into bristles. Then they rub it against the teeth. The bark releases natural antibacterial compounds, silica for abrasion, tannins that tighten gum tissue. This wasn't primitive. It was effective microbiology without a microscope. But here's the thing. The miswak couldn't stop the stone grit wear. It could only manage the bacteria. Every morning and evening, an Israelite would sit by the door of their house. They'd chew the stick, work it between their teeth, spit out the residue, then start their day. And they had other methods too. Ash from the cooking fire, mixed with water, used as a paste. The alkaline content neutralized acids, but it was also abrasive. so it accelerated the wear they were already getting from the bread. Saltwater rinses, vinegar for gum inflammation, honey applied directly to sore spots, which, ironically, fed the bacteria but numbed the pain temporarily. One practice that sounds strange to us, chewing on raw fennel seeds after meals. Fennel has antimicrobial properties, and the act of chewing produced more saliva. Saliva is the body's natural buffer against acid. Dr. Sarig's research showed that the mouths of ancient Israelites had significantly less Streptococcus mutans, the primary cavity-causing bacteria, than modern mouths. The combination of low sugar, high saliva production, and mechanical cleaning kept decay rare. But rare doesn't mean zero. When a cavity did form, or when a tooth abscessed, what did they do? The Bible doesn't give us a dental manual, but the skeletons tell us exactly what happened. And it's not pretty. Look at this mandible, excavated at Tel Megiddo, dated to the 9th century before Christ. There's a hole at the root of the second molar. That's an abscess. Infection ate through the bone. And here's what the bioarchaeology tells us. That person lived with this infection for years. Not weeks, years. The bone around the abscess shows signs of healing. The body tried to wall off the infection, but it never went away. Imagine that. A low-grade infection, pulsing, throbbing, every time you chew, every time you breathe cold air. What did they do about it? First option, nothing, and endure. The archaeological record shows that most dental infections were simply lived with. The body adapted. People ate on the other side of the mouth. They chewed less. They suffered. Second option, herbal remedies. The Hebrew text of Isaiah 38:21 mentions a poultice of figs applied to a boil. The same principle applied to dental abscesses. Warm compresses of herbs. Clove oil, if they had access to trade routes. Myrrh, which has antiseptic properties. Both appear in the Song of Solomon and in Proverbs as valuable commodities. But here's where it gets real. Third option, extraction. Archaeologists have found dental instruments at several sites. Small bronze or iron forceps, chisels, probes. Dr. Josias, former curator of archaeology at the Israel Museum, documented these tools from contexts dating to the 8th century before Christ. Tooth extraction in ancient Israel was not gentle.
Tighter, tighter!
There was no anesthesia,
Gods.
no alcohol strong enough to
Time
numb.
is almost here
The
now.
patient was held down by family members.
I know.
The tooth was loosened with a small chisel and mallet, then pulled with forceps.
Hold steady, Elia.
The socket was packed with salt or ash to stop bleeding.
Longer, it is loose.
The mortality rate from infection after extraction was significant.
Eliab.
An open wound in a mouth full of bacteria, without antibiotics.
Child. We are
One study of remains from the City of David excavation found that approximately 15% of adult skeletons showed signs of dental infection that contributed to death. The infection spread to the jaw, then to the bloodstream, then sepsis. The Book of Proverbs speaks of a broken tooth as a metaphor for unreliability. Proverbs 25:19. Like a bad tooth or a lame foot is confidence in a faithless person in time of trouble. That comparison only works if everyone knows what a bad tooth feels like. But here's the question that kept me up at night. If losing teeth was this common and this dangerous, how did adults
The
eat?
grain runs low.
How did they speak?
Not enough.
Because losing front teeth changes your entire life. And the archaeological evidence shows they started losing them young. Let me give you the numbers straight from the research.
Analyzing these specific
Dr.
wear patterns
Patricia
on a
Smith,
handful,
a leading
established
dental
a direct
anthropologist
link
at
to the
Hebrew
dietary
University,
indicated in the
analysed over
data.
200 skeletons from biblical period tombs.
Suggests something heavy.
Her data is the standard
Perhaps a
reference.
clamp.
By age 30, the average Israelite had lost at least one permanent molar. By age 40, the average was 3 to 4 teeth missing. By age 50, many had lost all their molars, the grinding teeth, the ones you need to process food. By age 60, the lucky ones still had their front teeth, but the back of the mouth was empty bone.
I don't
Now here's the part that changes how you read the Bible. When the Psalms talk about God renewing your youth like the eagle, or when Isaiah promises that those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength, these weren't abstract metaphors about feeling young again. They were promises about survival, about getting to old age without your body falling apart. Because in ancient Israel, old age with intact teeth was rare, exceptional, a sign of divine favor. Think about what these people ate: bread, grains, stews, lentils, vegetables, meat only on special occasions. Everything required chewing, and if you couldn't chew, you couldn't get enough calories. The solution was the mortar and pestle. By the time an Israelite lost their molars, they were already eating food that had been pre-chewed by the mortar. Grains pounded into porridge, meat boiled until it fell apart, vegetables cooked into mush. But this created another problem. Without the mechanical stimulation of chewing, the jawbone itself began to weaken. Bone resorption. The jaw shrank, and that affected the remaining teeth. The front teeth would shift, crowd, loosen, and eventually they'd start falling out too. There's a skeleton in the collection of the Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem. A woman, approximately 55 years old, from the Iron Age II period. She has 0 teeth left. 0. The bone in her jaw has completely remodeled. Smooth, healed. She lived without teeth for years. Her diet was entirely soft foods, gruel, broth, wine-soaked bread. She survived because her community fed her. And that brings us to the question nobody asks. What happened to your speech when you lost your front teeth? Because the Bible is full of spoken words, prophecies, teachings, curses. How did a toothless mouth pronounce the words of God? This is a skull from the Lachish excavations. The front incisors are missing, lost years before death. The bone around the sockets shows resorption. The teeth were gone long enough for the bone to heal over.
Help me,
Now try to speak with no front teeth.
please.
Try to say the word shalom. The eshwan sound requires the tongue to touch the back of the upper incisors. Without those teeth, the sound changes. Air escapes differently. The Hebrew language of the biblical period had a lot of dental consonants. The T sound, the D sound, the S sound, the shesh sound.
I hear you, my
All of them require contact between the tongue and the teeth.
spirits are near.
If you lost your front teeth, you developed a lisp, not a minor one, a significant speech impediment. Now here's where it gets interesting. In the Hebrew Bible, there's a famous story about speech. In Judges chapter 12, the Gileadites test the Ephraimites at the Jordan River. They ask them to say the word shibboleth. The Ephraimites couldn't pronounce the esh sound. They said siboleth, and they were killed. Scholars have debated what this means phonetically, but here's what the bioarchaeology adds. The region of Ephraim had different soil composition, different water sources, different access to trade routes. The diet in Ephraim may have included more abrasive foods than in Gilead, or less access to cleaning sticks, or different cooking methods. The point is, a speech difference that gets you killed. That's how serious teeth were in ancient Israel. And it goes deeper. The prophet Isaiah, in chapter 6, describes his vision of God. He says, "I am a man of unclean lips." The Hebrew word there, sapha, literally means lip, but it also means language, speech. Could Isaiah have been speaking about his own dental issues? We don't know. But the community of ancient Israel would have understood that a person with missing teeth had unclean speech. Not ritually impure, but physically compromised. The book of Psalms repeatedly calls God the one who opens the mouth and looses the tongue. These aren't just poetic phrases. They're prayers from people who struggled to speak clearly. One last piece of evidence, and it's the one that made me stop and think about my own teeth for a long time. Dr. Rachel Sarig's team also looked at something else. The angle of wear on the teeth. They found that the wear wasn't uniform. The front teeth of many skeletons showed wear on the inner surface, not the outer. That's unusual. The only way to produce that pattern is if the teeth were used as tools, specifically for holding objects while the hands worked. Ancient Israelites used their teeth as a third hand, holding thread while sewing, holding leather while making sandals, holding rope while tying knots, holding the end of a bowstring while stringing a bow. The teeth weren't just for eating. They were tools, every day, for everything. And here's the honest truth. I used to think ancient people had it easier. No sugar, no processed food, no soda. Their teeth must have been perfect, right? Wrong. They had different problems. Worse problems. Problems that couldn't be fixed with a filling or a root canal. Problems that changed how they ate, how they spoke, how they lived, and how they died. The bioarchaeology is clear. Ancient Israelites didn't have perfect teeth. They had teeth that were worn down, infected, pulled out, and lived without. They managed. They adapted. They survived. But they paid a price for every meal they ate. A price written in their bones. Every time you read the Bible and someone offers bread to a stranger, every time a prophet speaks, every time a psalmist praises God for sustaining their life, remember what that bread cost and what that speech required. The teeth of ancient Israel tell a story the Bible never wrote down, but the bones preserve it.